Welcome to House Lex Estate. Today we're doing a deep dive into Robert Cialdini's book, Pre-Suasion.
Right. Now, you know how sometimes you're buried in articles just trying to figure out what's actually important?
It's overwhelming.
Exactly. And we're here to pull out the really fascinating bits for you. Basically, turning that information fire hose into something you can actually, drink from. Persuasion, it might make you think of, I don't know, slick salespeople or something.
Yeah, that's the common idea. But Cialdini's angle here is really different. He's looking at how influence gets started before a single word of the main message is even spoken.
It's about setting the stage, mentally.
Precisely. How to make people receptive before they encounter the message itself.
And our source for this is Cialdini's own intro to the book, right? Where he sort of lays out his map.
Exactly that. His acknowledgments, the introduction, it sets the stage for his whole exploration.
So our goal today, let's try and distill those core ideas he introduces right at the start. Give everyone a leg up on understanding this subtle art of influence.
Yeah, let's find those aha moments, those surprising facts. But keep it, accessible. No getting lost in academic weeds.
Okay, ready to dive in. Let's unpack this idea of persuasion.
Let's do it.
So, Cialdini makes this point straight away. Success isn't just what you say. It's about what happens before you say it.
That's the core of persuasion, arranging for people to already be receptive before they even hear your argument.
And he's careful to say this isn't manipulation in, a sneaky way.
No, it's more about strategically focusing attention, pointing the mental spotlight, you could say.
What do you think is the most striking thing about that, focusing on the before?
Well, it just shifts the whole focus, doesn't it? We usually think persuasion is the argument itself, the words.
Yeah, like the pitch.
But he's saying, hold on, you need to prepare the ground first. Receptiveness isn't fixed. You can actually cultivate it. Like you said, setting the stage.
That makes sense. And to figure out how to do that, his research method was, pretty unique.
Oh, yeah, definitely unconventional. He basically went undercover, a secret agent of sorts.
Right. He infiltrated training programs for professions that, rely on getting people to say yes.
Car salespeople, marketers, advertisers, charity fundraisers, the whole spectrum.
For 3 years, just sitting in their classrooms taking notes.
And here's a really interesting observation he made.
Okay.
The trainers in each specific field, they often insisted that persuasion worked totally differently in their profession compared to others.
Huh. So car sales techniques wouldn't work for charities, and vice versa, according to them.
That was the claim Cialdini kept hearing, and he found that really curious.
Why curious? What does that suggest?
Well, it suggests maybe they were focused on the surface details, the specific tactics, rather than underlying principles. Cialdini, being a scientist, was looking for those deeper, universal connections.
Ah, okay. So he suspected there was something common, even if the practitioners themselves didn't see it.
Exactly. He wasn't just taking their word for it. He was observing, comparing, looking for patterns across these seemingly different fields.
And that hands-on, in the trenches research, that's really what gives his insights weight, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just lab theory. It's grounded in how persuasion actually plays out in the real world with real stakes.
It really highlights the value of seeing things in their natural context, not just in a controlled lab setting.
That ecological validity, as researchers call it, it adds a layer of practicality. These ideas have been tested, in a way, in the environments where they're meant to be used.
Now, Cialdini is also realistic. He says, look, in human behavior, nothing's 100% guaranteed.
Right. No magic bullet, no persuasive trick works every single time on every single person.
But, and this is the key part, there are approaches that consistently improve the odds. They heighten the probability of agreement.
And even a small increase in those odds can be decisive, can it?
Totally. Whether it's, like he says, getting your kids to listen, or a whole organization outperforming rivals, that slight edge matters.
It's about playing the probabilities, understanding what makes agreement more likely, even if it's not certain. Like investing, maybe, you make informed bets.
That's a good way to put it. It's about tilting the field slightly in your favor.
And this focus on likelihood, not certainty, feels much more realistic when you're talking about people.
Okay, so he gives this example, right? Jim, the salesman.
Ah, yes, the fire alarm salesman, top performer.
But the interesting thing is, Jim wasn't doing anything different with the product itself, or the basic sales pitch everyone else used.
So what was his secret?
It was persuasive. He found a way to get associated with the idea of trust before he even started his presentation.
How did he do that? Did he just say, "Trust me"?
No, nothing that direct. It was subtle, He arranged things so people treated him in a way that signaled trust, maybe through introductions or how he was received. It was about the association.
Wow. So just being linked to the concept of trust, even implicitly, made the difference.
Apparently, it was the main thing separating him from his colleagues who weren't as successful. Shows the power of association.
That's fascinating. It taps into those mental shortcuts our brains use. Trust is huge if you can link yourself to that before the pitch.
You've already lowered a major barrier. People filter information through that trust lens.
Makes you think, doesn't it? What subtle cues are we sending out that build or erode trust before we even get to the main point?
Definitely. It's about proactively setting that positive context.
So beyond trust, Cialdini also hints at these broader principles of influence, the ones he'll explore more later.
Yeah, he calls them the broad boulevards to change. Smart shortcuts. He mentions his earlier book, Influence, and those 6 big principles.
Reciprocity, liking, authority, social proof, scarcity, and consistency. The classics.
Right, and he suggests that for persuasion to work best, you should try and channel attention towards those concepts beforehand. Why those 6 specifically?
Because, generally speaking, they guide people correctly. They're usually reliable cues for making good decisions in social situations. So if you can prime one of those...
Like if you can subtly highlight social proof, show that others approve before you ask for something.
Exactly. You're making the path towards saying yes feel more natural, more aligned with how people generally make good choices. Understanding these principles gives you a kind of map for persuasion.
So persuasion is like putting up signposts pointing towards those main roads of influence before you ask someone to take your specific exit ramp.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, making the desired path feel familiar and right.
Okay, another interesting aside he makes is about the relationship between his field, social psychology, and behavioral economics.
Yeah, that was interesting. He mentioned some colleagues felt behavioral economics kind of stole their thunder, taking credit for similar ideas.
But Cialdini didn't seem to feel that way.
No, his take was more positive. He felt behavioral economics actually helped raise the profile of social psychology.
How so?
By adopting and popularizing some core social psych concepts, especially in ways that connected to policy and real-world economics, it made the ideas more mainstream, he suggests.
So it actually led to social psychologists getting invited to policy discussions and things like that, which wasn't happening as much before.
That's the picture he paints. So instead of a turf war, he saw it as sort of synergistic. Different fields validating and amplifying each other's relevant findings.
It's a good reminder that ideas often spread and gain traction when different disciplines pick them up, right? Even if there's some overlap.
And it shows how the packaging and the brand of the discipline championing an idea can affect its wider impact.
Finally, he mentions the endnotes in Persuasion. He says they're not just citations.
Right, he calls them color commentary. Meaning they contain extra bits of info, interesting tangents, things to expand your knowledge beyond the main text, little nuggets for the curious reader.
So for someone listening who really wants to learn, the advice is don't skip the endnotes.
Definitely. He's basically inviting you to dig deeper. It's like bonus content that adds texture and depth. You might find some real gems back there.
Like the director's commentary on a DVD, adding extra context.
Exactly that kind of thing. It enriches the main experience.
Okay, so the big takeaway seems to be effective persuasion often starts silently.
Yeah, it's about shaping that mental landscape before the main event, guiding attention subtly towards concepts that help your cause.
And for you, listening in, someone who values getting knowledge quickly and deeply, understanding this stuff offers a really powerful lens, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You start seeing your daily interactions differently. You notice the persuasive attempts, the background context setting. It makes you a more discerning person.
It helps you navigate it all better. Now, that idea of Cialdini infiltrating all those sales trainings, it does leave you with a thought, doesn't it?
Which is?
How often are we the subjects of these persuasive strategies without even realizing it? In advertising, politics, everyday conversations.
It's almost certainly happening all the time, constantly.
And as we learn more about these tactics, like we are now, does that knowledge empower us? Or does it just show us there's an even deeper game of influence being played?
That's a really provocative question. Does awareness inoculate you, or just make you aware of how complex the dance really is, something to chew on?
Definitely. Well, this first look at persuasion is clearly just scratching the surface.
Oh, for sure. There's so much more in the book about how to channel attention, the power of association in different contexts. Lots to explore.
We hope this gives you a sense of those initial foundational ideas and maybe piques your interest to think about how they show up in your own life. or even to read Cialdini yourself.
Consider how these concepts resonate.
And if you found this deep dive helpful and you want more shortcuts to understanding the world around you, definitely subscribe to House Lexus State.
We'll keep digging into fascinating topics just like this one.
Thanks for joining us.